everybody. It's Ben Deary here. My latest EP, Ice on the Roses Volume 2, just released. So I wanted to talk about what Ice on the Roses means to me as a whole. So the reason why this EP was called Ice on the Roses Volume 2 is because all the songs on this EP and the last EP or album, however you classify it, which was called Ice on the Roses, all these songs go together to sort of create the same story or same concept in my mind. I do want the listeners of my music to attach their own meaning to my music. I want people to hear what they're going to hear, kind of meet them where they are and let them put whatever they want to onto the lyrics and onto the music and onto the songs in general. So if you think a video like this would interfere with your ability to listen to the album that way, then by all means, watch another video. I have a lot of other videos, or watch something else on YouTube. It's completely your decision. But I thought it might be helpful, with both albums being released now and the story being completed, to talk about what I see these songs meaning and what I was getting at when I wrote these songs. And when I first started releasing Ice on the Roses, I was doing a waterfall release. So I was only releasing a couple songs at a time, and when each set of songs, I was usually doing it in two. When each set of two songs came out, they'd go onto the same album, because that's something you can do now with digital release, and I thought that was cool, and it gave me a vehicle to start releasing music, even though I was just learning about music production and recording, and even really songwriting. I was still pretty new. And I was learning a lot of lessons. One of the biggest lessons I learned was I should have all the songs more ready before I start releasing next time. I at least want to have them all written. I was not able to release songs at the rate I wanted to. I knew from the beginning that I wanted Ice on the Roses to have 10 or 11 songs. But between the first 6 songs and the next 5 songs, which make up Ice on the Roses Volume 2, I learned a lot about production, about mixing and mastering and recording. The latter 5 songs sounded different from the songs that are on Ice on the Roses, but they didn't just sound different, they sounded more polished, at least to me. I liked the way they sounded better. So I didn't want to use all the techniques and methods I used in the first Ice on the Roses on my new songs just to fit them all in the same album. I also didn't want these songs that didn't really fit the sound of the first album going on the same album. So rather than doing a 11-song album, I left Ice on the Roses at 6 songs, and I released another EP with these 5 songs. The hardest part about doing that was the fact that not only was I going to add to Ice on the Roses, I was going to change the order of the songs as they came out. I wanted Ice on the Roses to be Ice on the Roses, the song, Leave This Out, How I Want to Shine, Undenial, Going Up in Smoke, Young Hero, Mind Game, 2-Inch Tall Giraffe, Parking Spaces, Don't Stop Trying Now, and finally, A Nobody and a King. And the reason I wanted it to be that way is because I see these songs as being sort of paired up. I wanted the story to hinge around the song Young Hero, rather than putting at the beginning or at the end to emphasize it. I thought it sort of encapsulated the feeling that the whole album was going for, and that the first 5 songs would lead up to it. Then you have Young Hero, and then the next 5 songs would sort of deal with, after Young Hero, after the protagonist or the person from whose point of view we're listening, after that person went through the events or the thoughts in Young Hero, the aftermath of that would have been those last 5 songs. And they mirror each other. Ice on the Roses mirrors A Nobody and a King. So that's the first song and the last song. They bookend the album, and they're sort of mirrors of each other in a conceptual way. And then Leave This Out mirrors Don't Stop Trying Now, which is the second song, and the second to the last song, and so on. If you go that way, then How I Want to Shine mirrors Parking Spaces, Undenial mirrors 2-Inch Tall Giraffe, and Going Up in Smoke mirrors Mind Game. So when I was releasing these songs 2 by 2, I released Going Up in Smoke and Mind Game together, and I was going to release the other 4 songs, and then last I was going to release Young Hero and drop it right in the middle. But since I ended up dividing them up into 2 EPs, now I have Ice on the Roses through Mind Game on one EP, and then Young Hero through Nobody and a King on another EP. And someday I think I'm going to remaster them all and release that in his 11-song album. Maybe, no promises. But that's my general plan. Let's get into the concept behind the album and these songs and what we're going for here. So we have Ice on the Roses, which is our protagonist, or me, or you, or someone thinking, reflecting on their life as it's about to start. Now these songs are not super deliberate. They're a little vague, but it's not completely abstract. It's a little vague what we're talking about here. It's some sort of life change. It's some sort of journey that this person's about to start, and they're reflecting on their past as they go into this journey. That's why one of the first lines is, a memory is real as what's perceived. They're looking at their memory and realizing that the past as they remember it is real to them, and that's what they're going to have to go off of. None of us remember our past perfectly, but our memory is what is the best tool we have to use in shaping our future. So he's reflecting on the past. He's contemplating how some of it has gone and how he's unsure of a lot of things, and that sort of I'm just gonna say he because I see it as myself, but that's how he wants to be. He doesn't want too much attention. That's one of the motifs. He doesn't want too much attention. He wants to be out of focus where no one notices, but that term out of focus is also used to articulate that everything's a little fuzzy, everything is a little unsure. And then leave this out, we get a little more concrete with the thoughts, specifically looking into the past. So now he's looking into the past and he's talking about some specific things. And this song was actually, for me, it was based around the events of when I met my wife when I was a teenager, and how different her perception of me must have been from when we got married as adults. But in general too, just like people you love or people you're close to, nobody's perfect. And one of the things I think we do for people that we love is leave out a lot of the stuff that's embarrassing or not ideal. If not, leave it out completely. We don't use people's flaws to define them, especially not the people we love. So here we are, we've got our protagonist, and he's thinking about someone he knew in the past and his childhood or adolescent relationships as he goes into this next stage of life. Then we have How I Want to Shine, and this one is a big reason why I want to remaster some of these tracks, if I'm being honest. Like, I shouldn't even say that. I want you to listen to them and take them for what they are, but I do want to remaster this one. It was the first time I tried anything with layering vocals, and I layered quite a number of vocals on this track, and it gets a little messy. But I think it's some cool vocal parts, and I did that partly because that's the way I wanted the song to sound, and partly because this song is the first one on the album that, to me, it's from a different voice. It's not necessarily the protagonist thinking anymore, even though it has some of those same themes of, it says, I don't want to be a star. That's not how I want to shine. That's not really my voice. I honestly don't necessarily feel that way, so like and subscribe. But it's definitely, it's like a mentor's voice. It's like an older person speaking to the main character of this story and sort of giving advice or giving their 2 cents on their life as they look back on it. Just a simple, good life, connecting with people like the protagonist. And I think the multiple voices with different effects on them sort of show how this is this older mentor's voice inside the protagonist's head rather than his own voice like we've been hearing through the rest of the album. And then Undenial comes, and Undenial it doesn't really mirror How I Want to Shine, but it is going through this same part of the story where this guy has a mentor, or maybe multiple mentors, fathers and coaches and uncles, whoever it may be, talking to him. And Undenial is from the perspective of someone who isn't as happy with the way their life or their relationship with the protagonist at least turned out. And again, there's a couple different things going on here. If you listen to Undenial, I released that as a single before the album. It was the first thing I ever released. It does have these themes of like getting started, beginning a new persona. There's these themes of regret. There's these themes of new beginning, but also regretting the way things went in the past. So it's getting a little heavy. People that he's looked up to his whole life and people that he considers mentors have not necessarily told him everything. They haven't necessarily let him in on some of the unfortunate or scary things that he might be facing as he takes this next step. So then we get Going Up in Smoke, which is the darkest song on the album. This is someone who's really, I think, being negative. Not necessarily correctly. Like, it's not meant to make the listener feel negative. Even the person saying it, I don't think they're like hopeless or desperate. They're just, well, what they're telling the protagonist isn't a happy thing. It's, you know, they're feeling like they made mistakes and they didn't get the results they wanted. And so that's kind of a warning, I suppose. It's ominous. And then that's where I would drop Young Hero. But the way it is, like I explained, that's where Mind Game comes in. So Mind Game is where we come back to the protagonist. Now this is his voice again. This is him experiencing all these things he's being told about and his own take on it. Mind Game shows how this is confusing. It's not the darkest song on the album, but it's kind of creepy. It's probably the creepiest sounding song on the album, where it's got the whispering. Music theory gurus may disagree with me on this, but the way I was thinking when I wrote it is that it's changing between the major, A major, and A Phrygian. So like a very light happy scale and a very dark scale, but with the same tonal center. So it's making everything feel really unbalanced, and the lyrics come very fast, and even the lyrics are a little uncanny and creepy. And so that's the way the protagonist is feeling, but with it starting and sort of ending in A major, it's overall happy. Like, the protagonist he didn't just take to heart what he heard in Going Up in Smoke or even Undenial and say, okay, that's the way it's gonna be. He faced the problems in his life head on, but he didn't let those problems or the things he was told define what he thought. But he is feeling confused and discombobulated and a little scared. And that's where Ice on the Rose Volume 1 ends, and we get Young Hero to kick off Ice on the Roses Volume 2. Now, Young Hero, it's, I guess, almost a summary of this entire thing. It's about feeling the need to go out there and live life. Not only live life as it currently is, but how to deal with the fact that life is only so long. That song definitely has themes of, you know, the struggle with mortality. He's not comfortable with the fact that after he goes out there and lives this life that he's anticipating, that it's all just gonna go away and he's gonna die. So a little bit morbid, but if you listen to the song, that's definitely a happy song. More than anything else. Then Mind Game sort of comes next in the story, you know, where you have Young Hero, okay, I'm about to start Mind Game, I start, this is what I initially think. Then you get 2-inch Tall Giraffe. He's starting to realize it's not all confusion. It's sort of a stop and smell the roses, like, make something poetic out of this. That's the idea behind it. So then we go into Parking Spaces, which is very personal. That was written for my wife about certain things that happened to me and her. But when we went on our first I think it was our second date, I kissed her at the end of the date. You know, we were standing in the parking lot and she said, "You need to stop kissing me in parking lots." And I hadn't even noticed that we were always in a parking lot. So the words are in between the parking spaces, right down to our favorite places. It's like our relationship went from there. Like, we grew something out of something even as unimpressive as a couple of parking spaces. And that plays into the theme of the protagonist is in the middle of living life and these things are happening to him, like falling in love. And it's the first love song I wrote. Before that, I kind of pride myself on not writing love songs. I'm proud of Parking Spaces, and it does have that special place in my repertoire as the first love song I wrote, because I'm sure it won't be the last. That takes us to Don't Stop Trying Now, which is, it mirrors Leave This Out, at least musically. Leave This Out is very jazzy. Don't Stop Trying Now is very, it's got a lot of, I guess, dissonance in it. musical dissonance, and it's just kind of a last or an almost last word of encouragement to people listening, and also something that the protagonist is probably telling himself, like, don't stop trying now, like we're doing good, we got it, we're gonna accomplish our goals. And then finally we get to Nobody and a King, and that's kind of the moral of the story. Like he feels like he has to be humble, he has to know that he's not the center of attention, he's not the superstar all the time, but he's also got to see himself as sort of a king, someone who's able to make decisions. And like I said, king, it's a gendered word, but again, I sort of saw this as myself. You've got to be both those things when certain situations in life come around. At least that's advice that I think he's giving himself. And if you listen to the second verse of Nobody and a King, he really references a lot of the other songs. Maybe they're all references to Volume 1, but they're references to other things to sort of tie everything together. And then it ends. And if that helps you enjoy the album, then great. If you'd rather listen to the album without knowing what I was thinking when I made it, I hope you didn't watch this video. I know it's still pretty vague. It's not really telling you what type of adventure this guy's embarking on, or what type of journey he's on, or what he does, or who he's with, or, you know, it's not really, it's meant to be applicable to a lot of people, and it definitely errs on the side of being vague and abstract. But it definitely has a lot of motifs, even some that I don't believe I mentioned here. It's definitely got a point, and I just thought for the analytical people out there, this might answer some of your questions. If you heard something else, some other message being told, I would love to hear it. I would love to hear that in the comments. And I'm sure the other viewers, if someone likes the analytical side of music so much that they watched this whole video, then I'm sure they would love to hear your take on the message of these two EPs that make up an album. And if you haven't heard it yet, I really hope you listen. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I really hope you do. And thank you so much for watching.